happy. I'm gonna say happy Monday, but it's gonna be happy Tuesday for most people listening here. This is what are we on episode 5 now? Drinking
Yeah.
champagne here.
Episode 5, we've outlasted a couple of high budgeted network shows that got canceled midway through the first season. So, yay, us.
Yeah, too bad Lost didn't get canceled halfway through the first season. What a oof. Are you a Lost fan?
I wasn't. I didn't
Okay.
get into it at that time. The last show that I really got into as it was going up until Abbott Elementary, which is now just starting, and that's fantastic. But the last big one that I was really on as it was going was The Good Place, which was
Okay. Yeah.
so good at its best. So good.
Yeah. I have a friend Steven who just absolutely loves Lost, and I tell him I was like I got through like 3 seasons, and I wish I had that portion of my life back.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
that's just I wasn't big into Lost, but I know people that were into a couple of other shows. I know people that loved the first 4 seasons of The West Wing, and then season 5 happened and it just drove them away. I love The West Wing. Season 5 was bad, but it didn't do that for me. But yeah, so if your friend loves Lost, you just think he's lost. Thank you.
uh, West Wing, Dule Hill. That's the
Yes.
only. I am a huge fan of the show Psych.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
my girlfriend is a huge Psych fan too, and I got to tell you, if you're Dule Hill, who went from The West Wing to Psych to a season or two of Suits, that guy didn't have to find work for more than 15 years. It's
wasn't
a
he
good,
on
good work to have.
Ballers?
He might have been.
I think he might have been on Ballers too, which is that like it was like an HBO show I
Yeah, The
think
Rock show.
with The
Yeah,
Rock. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then the oh my goodness, oh James Roday, who finally changed his name back to his given name Rodriguez, is in that ripoff of This Is Us.
yeah, yeah.
I
I'm not sure
forgot the
what
name
the
of the
name is,
show.
but yeah, he was a cancer survivor on that show, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, like Simple Little Things or something Little
That's it.
Things
Yeah,
or
it's something
something.
along those lines. Yeah,
Yeah.
I no, my mom had it on when I traveled east a while back. That's the only reason I know the show exists.
Yeah, so little trip report here when talking about Breeders' Cup. So I was lucky enough to be able to be in person, and it's the lead up to it for me personally was just an absolute shit show. All right, let me just paint a picture here for you. Okay,
This is going to
so
be some planes, trains, and automobiles
oh
level
my
stuff.
goodness, dude. So when my father passed away, I was left his car. It was a mint condition Cadillac SRX 2015, less than it was like 55,000 miles on it. Beautiful car, fully loaded, like it just nicest car ever. I never really liked driving it, but because I had it and it was my car at the time had over 100,000 miles on it. I ended up giving my car to my sister so my nephew can drive it. But get this car, beautiful. It's in great shape. Fast forward to a couple weeks ago, I start noticing this noise in the back. Sounds like road noise. Maybe like there's like a CV joint or something might be a little loose. Whatever. Um, doesn't really get any worse, but it's just annoying. And so I'm like, if I'm gonna drive to Kentucky, let me get it looked at. Let me just get it checked out. Bring it to the shop on Monday before Breeders' Cup. They take a look at it. The guy gives it back to me within a couple hours. Hey, we can't replicate it. There's nothing wrong. I'm like, okay. He's like, look, we inspected it. Everything looks great. This car looks like it's in great shape. I was like, okay. Driving in on Tuesday, picking up groceries, literally on the way back, same thing. I'm like, so I drop it off again, and I tell them, hey, I don't know, it happened again. And Wednesday, I took off of work to basically get everything ready to leave Thursday. Right, I needed to pack. I had some stuff around the house I was going to do. I had we had just bought a couple dressers. I was going to put those together, and then I was going to
You
go
are going
buy.
to build up goodwill before leaving for a couple of
Exactly.
days.
Yeah.
That's page number one of the husband playbook.
Yeah, and then I was gonna go. I had to go to like Kohl's or Macy's or something and buy a blazer. I had a blazer. It's actually right next to me right now, but it was just like it was a little tight in the button, And I was like, all right, I'm gonna go like just buy another one. Like I only have one. Like I could use a blue one because I think this is like a gray corduroy one. So I was like, all right, so I got to knock all this stuff off. Well, I don't have a car the whole day, so I'm literally in the middle of putting together this dresser. It's like 2 o'clock. The shop calls me. Hey, we can't fix it. We finally figured it out. It's something in like your transmission, something in like your rear differential.
Oh, you never want to hear the word transmission when a shop
No.
calls, ever.
So they're like, you have to take it to the dealer. I'm like, all right, I take it to the dealer. And they were basically like, yeah, we wouldn't recommend driving on this. You probably need a whole new rear differential. It's going to cost you about $6,000 to do. And by the way, the part is back ordered. So you're not going to be able to get it for about 6 to 8 months minimum.
It's a good thing you hit for $13,000 a couple
Oh,
weeks
I
ago. And
mean,
by the way,
yeah.
you would not have played that sequence without yours truly. So you're
Yeah.
welcome.
So basically, they're like, yeah, we can give you, and they're like, I'm at a Cadillac dealership, and they're like, we can give you like 10 grand for the car. I'm like, no way. I'm like, I'm not gonna. First of all, I'm not gonna buy a Cadillac. Second of all, I'm like, so I'm talking to my brother, my buddy. And it was not my brother, my buddy Bill. He's like, man, he's like, just take it to CarMax, see what they'll give you for it, and then just buy something new. So literally, so I tell my wife, I pick her up from work. I tell my wife, I'm like, hey, I think I got to sell the car. Like, I'm gonna try and see what CarMax will give me. And in the meantime, I'm like calling people, seeing whose car I can borrow to drive down to Kentucky. Um, so my sister actually said I could take my old car with me down to Kentucky. So that was nice of her. But in the meantime, like I put all my info into CarMax, um, thinking they'll get back to me in a day or so, or whatever. And literally, they send me the offer, and they're offering me like 16 grand for the car, and my like phone starts ringing like 5 minutes after, and they're like, "Hey, when can you come in?" I was like, "Well, I'm driving." Like, I'm like, I like I haven't even looked at cars yet, and they're like, "Well, we'll buy your car," all this stuff, and I did a quick search, and I actually found a car that I've been wanting for a long time, which is a Ford Edge, relatively new, low mileage, fully loaded, and it was like maybe 10 grand more than what they were going to give me for the car. So no joke. Thursday, I'm supposed to be driving down to Kentucky. I wake up extra early, drive down, go to a car dealership, trade my car in, buy a new car, and then drive down to Kentucky. So, first of all, buying a car is like top 10 worst experiences in anybody's life.
It's on the
Like,
list. It's on the list.
CarMax made it easy, at least. Like, it was relatively simple. There was only one hiccup. And of course, it was my fault because I texted Caleb, who is who I stayed with. I'm like, hey, dude, I'm making great time. Everything's going smooth. I'm probably leaving here in an hour.
For
Two,
those of you that are listening to this on audio form, I just want to paint this picture. As Josh is telling this story, my head is in my hands because the second you say, I'm in good time, some transportation god somewhere goes, huh?
yep. And so there's a little hiccup. It's something like real stupid where like I have the title in hand. Car is fully paid off, but they're like, when we look you up electronically, it's not in there. I'm like, yeah, but I have it here. Yeah, but when we look it up electronically, it's not there. Lady tells me this is real common. Like, we just call this Secretary of State or whatever, you get it taken care of. It's super easy. I was like, okay, fine. It takes us basically three people and being on hold for about a half hour, 40 minutes till we finally get it done. And she's just like apologizing the whole time. She's like, this is normally real quick. This normally takes 5 minutes. Like, I'm so sorry. And there, I'm just like, great. And now remember, in the meantime, I am packed, ready to go um, to Kentucky. I haven't taken anything out of my car because I don't even know. Like, who knows? Maybe CarMax inspects the car and they're like, "Hey, actually, we're not going to give you that much. Hey, whatever." I mean, they gave me the full amount. They said everything looked good. They test drove it. Everything was fine. I was like, okay. Um, and so now I have to take all the stuff from my old car into the new car. I have a bunch of bags and stuff like that. Whatever. fine. But we're making good time. I made sure I left myself enough time to get down to Kentucky in time to do our stream, which is at 8:30 Eastern.
Oh boy, what could possibly go
It's a
wrong?
5.5 hour drive normally, right? No traffic. It's 5.5 hour drive. Obviously, I always tell myself 6.5, because stupid stuff happens, or maybe I need to get food or something. Like you build in a little bit extra time. So I'm leaving. I'm leaving the dealership at, I don't know, 12:45, and I'm so 6 hours puts me there at 45 minutes before stream. Um, and like I said, I have a little bit of wiggle room there. I mean, like, worst case is like I get there, a little late, or I'm basically setting my laptop up as we're starting. But of course, I hit traffic getting out of Chicago. But still, it still says it went from, and I forgot. So it's 5.5 hours from my house. So I'm 45 minutes closer. So it should be about 5 hours from where I'm at. So I'm like, okay, it says 5.5 hours. I'm still making good time. I stop and get a sandwich,
How was the
and
sandwich?
the sandwich was good,
Good.
but I went to Jersey Mike's, and normally, like, you're in and out. I was there for about 25 minutes because the people, like, normally, dude, I swear every time I've gone, the people are there, they're fucking slicing, they're going, and I know that probably looks weird on video, but they're just going, they're slicing, they're getting the subs out. Man, there were only like three people ahead of me, and it took me 20 minutes to get my sub, and they
So
were only ordering
they
one or
had
two,
Abe Vigoda in Good Burger working behind the counter.
basically, right?
Okay.
So
And the fact that you got that reference means it's a good thing we're doing this show.
So basically, something that should take 10 minutes is taking a half hour, whatever. And I'm like, okay. So these little annoyances are kind of building up. And now time is pretty tight. I'm texting Caleb. I'm like, hey, I'm going to be there like 20 to 30 minutes before the stream. Right. But hey, we're doing well. Doing well all the way till I-64 in Kentucky. I don't know what happened, but Thursday night, I-64, I was in standstill traffic, not moving, like people parked and like standing outside their cars looking what's going on for between 2.5 to 3 hours. And it was funny because I even told Caleb, I'm like, Caleb, don't worry, I left early. Because last time I went to Keeneland, I showed up at like 1 a.m. Not because I was really late, but because I left after work. And I told Caleb I was going to be late, and I told him I was going to arrive around midnight. I ended up being about 1, but okay, I was a little late. But I told him, I was like, Caleb, don't worry, I'm going to get there early. You're not going to have to wait up. Everything's going to be fine. As I pull in around 11 p.m. And it was just like, man, like I told Caleb, like, as soon as I got there, I was like, dude, I feel great now that I'm here. Like, all the crap I had to go through just to get to that point. It was just a terrible week. But made it to the Airbnb. Caleb and his family were nice enough to bring an air mattress for me. Like, it wasn't anything glamorous, but you know what? It was probably the most comfortable air mattress I've ever slept
I
on.
was
I
gonna
actually
say, after the day you had, that air mattress probably felt like a $3,000 Stearns and Foster.
Yep, dude, I slept great. I slept great, woke up, and I had all of Friday already capped, and we went in, and we went in firing. So, um gambling wise, not not really a great trip. And I think we were kind of going back and forth here, but I'm flipping our order here real quick. But unfortunately, the first kind of takeaway I kind of took from Breeders' Cup was, I don't know if Keelan should be hosting another Breeders' Cup. Um,
So before we go much further, we should probably dive into the format of the back half of the show. We've each got three sort of lessons learned from this year's Breeders' Cup, varying in sentiments, varying in things that we took away from the races, from the racetrack, from the horse racing industry. We've each got three of them. Josh is going first, and I got to tell you, between the traffic and now this, I'm wondering. Oh God. I mean, I know the bread pudding was technically overrated, according to our buddy Matt, the one member of any DeSantis family that we unconditionally like. And that's as much politics as we're going to go into on this show. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, and it's funny because Mr. Matthew DeSantis is also basically did the same format for his show, but I rest
We're not
assured,
copying you, I
no,
swear.
I mean, Andrew sent me this over the weekend, so, but yeah, you know, I think it's just a logistics thing. The track is beautiful. I love Keeneland. I've been to Keeneland twice. One time I was in the green room, one time I was in the equestrian room, and the service both places just amazing, right? The service was great. Um Never had a problem getting a drink and getting food, whatever. It was amazing. They really have that southern hospitality there. I mean, the people in the green jackets just like greet you. It's just a wonderful place. I don't know if they needed to hire temps or what they needed to do in order to have this many people and have this many people served at any time. But at one point, that just to highlight the type of service that we received this time, and this is just an incredible story. I still cannot believe this has happened. But Caleb's dad, the waiter comes by. Caleb's dad asks, "Hey, can I get a Coke and a water?" And the waiter says, "Absolutely, I'll be right back." Walks away, comes back with one cup, hands it to Caleb's dad. I look over and I'm like, that's really light for Coke. Like, maybe like the machine or whatever. Dude, Caleb's dad takes one sip and then he just like looks at me and like doesn't understand. Like, his brain can't process what he's drinking.
He's
And
drinking a Coke and water.
I start laughing. I'm like, he brought you a watered down Coke. He just looks at me like, are you fucking kidding me?
You know, I wasn't there. I have an idea of what those tickets cost, and it wasn't cheap. As an outside observer, I think it's hilarious. Had I been at that table, I would have grabbed something very sharp and like tried to do what the guy in Caddyshack did, the cook, when Roddy Dangerfield said his food was dog food. Dog food. I'll show you dog food, and then tries to like charge at the guy. You can't make that stuff up.
No, and I mean, if you go on Twitter, there are other people who complained about stuff outside, like general admission, right? About the food lines being too long, the drink lines being too long. Personally, I didn't experience that. The food obviously was included in our ticket. Drinks were not. Non-alcoholic were, but um, there actually the second day we showed up, there was one gentleman who was very upset as we were there talking to the people, like, "Hey, on the website it says that drinks were included." And then the people are trying to explain that although those people sit in the same section, there's like a different package they bought. Like they bought like a they bought like a Cup experience instead of just buying the
Oh,
tickets from Breeders' Cup. So the experience people got free drinks, whereas so like there was like a wristband situation, and the guy was just like furious. He's like, on the website it said that these drinks were free, and it was funny because I was texting Caleb and one of our friends Mike, and I was like, are drinks included? Like, that's a pretty steep ticket to not be open bar. And he's like, no. And Caleb's like, no, it's cash bar. And I was like I knew ahead of time. I knew after I bought them, rather, not really ahead of time. But I'm like, whatever. It's Breeders' Cup, like it's Keeneland, like thinking at least the service is going to be good, and that just wasn't the case.
a watered down Coke. My
It,
goodness. Now,
I,
uh,
I mean, honestly, like the other thing that really kind of bugged me is the waiter came up and he's like, "Hey, if you order alcoholic drinks for me, and you pay with a card, make sure you tip me in cash because if you tip on a card, I don't get it."
you know, my mom, my sister, and my stepsister have all worked in restaurants. I know a little bit more than most. That's not uncommon. And it's one of those things where if you research it and you start tipping in cash, they'll appreciate you. Not sure how I feel about a member of the wait staff coming right out and saying that, though. And before we go much further, it should be noted that, look, We are in a COVID world where everything is totally different than it was 2.5 years ago. And a lot of the lower paying jobs are jobs that a lot of people don't necessarily want. So, for any number of reasons, there may be certain situations where staff is short, where people are overextended, and there's a certain amount of sympathy that goes into that. Still, the thing that you mentioned right at the top, as far as hiring temps, you've got to at least have some idea as to the scale of what you're trying to do.
I mean, our waiter was so to backtrack to what I was saying before. Now, Matt, he told me this right when I sat down. Now he went to every single person as they sat down and told them the same exact thing. And it's kind of like it's one thing to tell the whole table at once, but it's just like, all right, he's telling every single. So now I'm thinking this guy is probably going to every single person he's serving and telling them that. And he even kind of was saying like, yeah, I normally don't do this kind of work. I do something else, whatever. And I was just kind of like, I don't know. It just felt very un-Keeneland like because of the other times I've been at Keeneland. The one thing I could say like was the service was great. So it left a sour taste in my mouth. Saturday was really hard. Like on Friday, I was able to meet and talk with a bunch of people. I met with Matthew, with Sarah from HRN. I saw Ed from HRN. I was, dude. Ed was just like super gracious. I was able to get a paddock pass for a race, and I was. I've never been in the paddock before in any race. Period, and to be able to be there at Keeneland and Breeders' Cup was just a freaking amazing experience. And yeah, I mean, like there were a lot of great things. Like the racing was great. It was exciting. You could feel the electricity in the air. But man, Saturday we were all packed in like sardines. Luckily, we found kind of a place to hang out when we left our like seated area, which was on the other side of the paddock, so we couldn't see racing from there. We had to actually go out to general admission and go to like the apron or whatever. But yeah, it was just I don't know. It left a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth. And I think that they just tried to put too many people in there, and I think they just stretched themselves a little thin. Um, and I don't know. I saw a lot of complaints from people on Twitter. Um, you
People on
know,
Twitter complaining, shocker.
Yeah, I know. I'm not going to go on there and start like putting people on blast. I mean, you guys. I told you guys personally in one of the group chats we're in, and I've complained to a couple people here, but like, still, hey, I got to go to the Breeders' Cup, and I had a great time. I just maybe if it's back at Keeneland, I'll skip that one and I'll wait for Santa Anita or Churchill.
Santa Anita is next year. Just saying. I'm trying to convince the girlfriend to go down there already. I'm trying to work on her, and she's going, I'm not really crazy about going to the races, but can you get me into one of the parties? Like the Breeders' Cup. It's 2 days of handicapping, 2 days of money making opportunities, and you want to go to this snooty party? I don't fit in there.
Can you get me in too?
You're below on the guest list. They put it this way: if there's a depth chart as far as who gets tickets, you're on it, but it's not high. No, there were concerns back in 2015 about Keeneland and whether or not it had the size and the ability to host. 2015 apparently went great. 2020, of course, no fans were supposed to show up. A couple thousand people did anyway. Still have no idea what the heck happened that day. I don't think we'll ever know for sure. I did see a couple of complaints in that vein. I wasn't there, but I trust your eyewitness account for sure. And it's just one of those things where if the feel isn't quite there for you, it takes away some of the ambiance from what should be something fantastic. So I get where you're coming from for sure. And the image of the watered down Coke is going to be in my mind for quite a while.
I got the shout out keep pounding flag going down there for he's probably listening or will listen at some point. But he was actually in the BCBC room, and he said that and the BCBC room is open bar. He said the service was so slow that he just walked out and bought his own booze. If they can't treat the people who were paying $10,000 to get into the contest well,
Yeah, that's terrifying, for lack of a better term.
yep.
But
So Andrew, you're up here, and you went with very Breeders' Cup related. The breeding
yeah,
industry is
um,
broken.
there's a cloud right over here, and I'm gonna go yell at it for the first of one of my three. Although I can't really tilt my head that way. In case my sound's a little bit different, by the way, I got a new microphone. We're testing out pickup patterns and whatnot, so hopefully it sounds a little bit better. But after I sent my three takeaways along, I realized I didn't word this one as well as I probably should have, because the breeding industry is doing quite well. It's the fact that the breeding industry and its relationship with the horse racing industry is fractured at best. Case in point, we know about the share in Flightline that was sold on Monday morning, 2.5% for $4.6 million. By that valuation, which is admittedly skewed because this is the only time anybody was ever going to be able to buy fractional ownership of Flightline at an auction, Flightline is worth $184 million. Now, there was conversation on Saturday night and into Sunday about Flightline's future before he was ultimately announced as retired. There were a bunch of very passionate fans saying, "How can you retire this horse after 6 starts?" Da, 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 da. That number is why. And that number is always going to win out over the numbers that Flightline could bring in while in training. Let's just map out a hypothetical campaign for if you and I own Flightline, who, by the way, doesn't run often. So any timeline that includes the Pegasus, the Saudi Cup, and the Dubai World Cup was never going to happen. Even if that horse was a gelding, it was never going to happen. It was going to be one of the three. It was probably going to be the Saudi Cup. You're running that in February. Comes back. Oh, let's run him in the Met Mile. The Saudi Cup is what, $20 million, thereabouts? Something with 8 figures. So, figure high 7 figures for a winner's purse. Let's just ballpark that. I don't have the numbers right here right now. Met Mile, it's $1 million race, 600,000 for first. You go back to California, Pacific Classic, $1 million purse, 600,000 of the winner. Then you go to the Breeders' Cup, $5 or $6 million, get a couple $1 million for winning that. The numbers don't add up for keeping a horse in training once it has shown its worth just a couple of times. If we can't keep horses on the track, what these horses are being bred for is going to collapse. I mean, we're already starting to see stallion commercials marked around a horse's pre debut workout. I'm not making this up. Nashville's stallion commercial was about a 4 furlong workout. Something's broken here. And I understand nobody's motivated to fix it because the people that are in this industry are making millions upon millions upon millions upon millions of dollars. We've gone from breeding to racing to breed, and it's getting to where the effects on the North American product can't be swept under the rug anymore. Something has to get fixed. And if it doesn't get fixed, we're going to have a major, major problem on our hands sooner rather than later.
Yeah, admittedly, we all know I came into the sport relatively recently. I think it's been about 4 years. Um, and yeah, I mean, the one big horse that stuck around for a really long time was Whitmore, right? Whitmore was that
And
old
even
war
he wasn't
horse.
a really, really, really big horse. He was just always around and he was always a hard knocking horse. And the only reason he stuck around is because he was a gelding.
Yeah, and uh, Hong Kong, for example, because of their situation with barns and everything like that. They basically, I think it's something like 99% of the horses that they race are geldings. Um, they buy and then geld their horses. they buy and breed to race, which is very much the old fashioned way.
Australia too.
Yeah,
Not
and
necessarily with the gelding, but they're running every 7 to 14 days like clockwork down there.
yeah, and I just don't know. I don't think that there's really a good answer. I mean, what we're gonna need bigger purses, but how are we gonna fund bigger purses when?
Takeout.
Yeah, yeah, takeout will go up, right? And they'll be like, hey, you guys want these horses so bad, let's raise a takeout. I don't know. It's just really tough. There's just I think we were talking previously about this Twitter conversation we saw, and it's just like basically two people yelling at each other who are both right. You
Yeah,
know, from a fan perspective, I won't even say a bettor's perspective, but we'll just say a fan's perspective. We want to see these horses race, right? From an owner's perspective or a trainer's perspective, hey, if this horse is worth this much and we can cash out and if we're an owner, hey, we can use that money to buy more horses, or as a trainer, like, hey, you only get so many of these chances. If you're able to get in on the breeding rights or whatever, I don't really know how those deals work out, but um, like, why wouldn't you cash in at this point? Especially because what have we seen with some of these big name horses? They come out their first season, 2 season, 3 seasons, they cash those big numbers, and if they're not productive, that number goes down, and it's like you got to strike while the iron's hot, right?
that's for sure.
There's no saying that Flightline's progeny are going to be amazing, right? It's a calculated risk, but just even 1 or 2 years of breeding seasons, like, that that more than pays for a lot of horses.
So here's some quick math here, and then we should probably move on to the next point. Let's assume, and we don't know these details yet, we're spitballing out numbers. Let's assume that Flightline's stud fee is $150,000. Rough figure. Let's assume that he winds up with a book of 200 mares. 200 times 150. And by 150, I mean 150,000. Let's assume he gets another book like that, because nobody's going to know if those horses can run or what they're going to look like. There was no reason to keep that horse in training from a business standpoint. The insurance costs would have been through the roof. And God forbid, if something had happened to Flightline, I don't know if those connections would have ever been able to live it down. Not just from a money standpoint, but from mental health, from PR, for an industry that really can't afford any more self inflicted PR wounds. From a business standpoint, this was the right move. And I will not fault the connections for doing that. Because look, if somebody came to me with a check for $184 million, you take the check. It's just what you do. But it's just thoroughly bonkers that now we're without not just Flightline. Life is Good is done as well. And that one had some more things that he could have accomplished. Epicenter, thankfully, it sounds like he's going to be okay after the accident that happened in the Classic. Mo Donegal, the Belmont winner, retired after that race. If Rich Strike is better bred, he doesn't come back as a 4-year-old, right? It's just thoroughly bonkers to me that the tail is wagging the dog. For the finances that are involved, I understand it. That doesn't mean I agree with it, and it doesn't mean it's good for the game.
Real quick, this is just a little quick aside, and I know we didn't prepare this, but who is your current? Who's one of the top horses you can think of for the Pegasus in January?
So we talked about this a little bit in one of the group chats, and I'm going to throw out a name, if he's healthy, that I wouldn't be surprised runs in that race. If there are no monsters, why not try Jack Christopher going 2 turns again at Gulfstream over what can be a very speed favoring surface? If he's going to get 2 turns anywhere, maybe it's there. But I don't know what the situation is with him. Of course, he was supposed to run in the Breeders' Cup Sprint. Chad Brown opted not to run him there. But if he's healthy, if he's sound, and if he wins the Cigar Mile by as many as he's supposed to win it by if he runs, why not take the shot there?
I'm gonna bet Rich Strike again, aren't I?
Yeah, you're going to be chasing him for a really long time. And he's going to wind up being the horse that clunks up for third or fourth every single time he runs, which, as an owner, fantastic, wonderful. You want horses like that that are ATMs every time they go to the windows. And also, that horse is pretty darn sound, too. It's not like they kept him on the sidelines too much. They skipped the Preakness with him, but other than that, it's not like they've made a habit out of ducking races that they should have been in. So
Yeah, let's move on here. My second takeaway is I just think that going forward with the way breeding is going, and this kind of ties into your last point. I just think the distaff's always going to be more exciting than the classic. I think you're just going to get you're always going to get two or three really good fillies or mares in that race, and it's just I think you're it's just going to always set up to be a better race. I mean, with the classic, we've had years where Justify wasn't able to, won the Triple Crown, wasn't able to run in there. You get some of these fields, and they're pretty weak. I remember was that the same year, the Vino Rosso year. I think the year that Accelerate won. I mean, Accelerate and City of Light turned out were really nice horses,
City of
but
Light, I am bitter about being retired when he was. After he won that Pegasus, I thought that horse would monkey stomp anything from 7 furlongs to a mile and a quarter. And we never got the chance to see him run again. Hey, back to the first point, breeding industry. Just wonderful stuff. But no, and not going too far off of your standpoint here, there was star power in the distaff this year. Malathat won it, now 10 of 14 lifetime, likely clinched a second straight Eclipse Award. She's got a Hall of Fame caliber resume. Poor Blue Stripe. She ran her eyeballs out at 25 to 1. Clariere winds up running third. Nest winds up running fourth. And if any of you out there in podcast land or YouTube land can tell me what the heck Irad Ortiz Jr. was doing on Nest, other than giving the horse one of the worst rides we saw over the 2 days, go ahead, because that horse was robbed of all chance. And look, I didn't like Nest in that particular race. If you watched or listened to this show last week, one of my bold predictions was Nest not only loses the distaff, she might not run second. That was one of the few things I was right about over the 2 days. I didn't like Nest at all. If she has anything close to a competent ride, Josh, I think she wins that race.
yeah, I was not on Nest, and I had Malathat and Clariere basically everywhere. I did not have Blue Stripe. I know there were a lot. I had a lot of people who needed Blue Stripe there, and yeah, it was a real exciting finish. It was probably my favorite race to watch of the weekend. I know some people will say the classic was, but I don't know. I just feel like you always get the big names to show up in that race, and every once in a while you get an upset. I feel like you haven't seen that in the classic in a while. Um, Andrew, would you like to move on to your next point?
Sure. I mean, I'd prefer that we not have to say this point. Oh, we're going to this one. Okay. I thought we were going to the other one. I
Oh,
thought we were
let's go to
going
the other
to,
one here.
yeah, yeah. Everybody, abort, abort, abort. You didn't see that. Okay. So, first of all, I sent over an auto-corrected typographical thing there. It should read Jackie's Warrior isn't a Hall of Fame. And this one hurt because very few sprinters in the history of this place right back here have accomplished more at this place right back here than Jackie's Warrior. 3 Grade 1 wins in 3 years, 5 of 6 at Saratoga with a second to Cody's Wish. More on him later. That's called foreshadowing, kids. What's his signature win? It's probably over Life is Good and the Alan Jerkins, which was great, but is that a Hall of Fame resume for an organization that generally doesn't look fondly on sprinters over the course of time? You put his resume up against that of Kona Gold, who a number of my fellow Hall of Fame voters, yes, snob alert, I have a Hall of Fame vote. Everyone out there, be jealous. The future and archiving the past and paying respect to it, among others, is in these hands. Anyway, Jackie's Warriors resume doesn't really stack up with Kona Gold's. Kona Gold won a Breeders' Cup race. He's been on the ballot the last couple of years. He hasn't gotten in, much to the consternation of some of the voter bloc and the nominating committee. If he's having a tough time getting in, I don't think Jackie's Warrior gets in, especially now that Jackie's Warrior is 0 for 3 in Breeders' Cup races. Granted, the middle one obviously had an excuse getting hurt, but fantastic sprinter, Eclipse Award winner last year, may well win the Eclipse Award again this year. I don't know. But as far as Hall of Fame goes, he might have got there with a win on Saturday in the Breeders' Cup Sprint. I don't think he ran terribly. He just didn't make the lead. And when he didn't make the lead, he sort of just ran in place, wound up finishing third. Not a Hall of Famer.
I love Jackie's Warrior. He was absolutely probably my most likely winner of
My
the whole
bomb ran
weekend.
well in that race, Josh. Obesos came on to ran fifth.
Yeah, I thought Jackie's Warrior was a stone cold single there, and for the third time in a row, he made me look foolish. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, really, can't. I can't say I pay a ton of attention to the Hall of Fame and the
How
Hall of
dare
Fame
you?
voting.
How dare you?
I've
How
been to
dare you
Saratoga
not pay
twice.
respect to this fantastic institution in upstate New York, of
Never
which I
been.
am a member of the voting bloc? How dare you?
Never been. I've never been there.
Well, I've
I've
never
been to
been to
Saratoga
Kentucky, so
twice. Saratoga twice for a full week, both times, and didn't go in.
you
I'm
should.
meaning to. I've
Seriously,
meant to.
it's a wonderful place. And look, we kid sometimes on this show. It's a wonderful place. They just remodeled a lot of it. They did a great job with it. And the people there are as devoted to preserving the history of racing as any that you'll find. And it's one of the great honors of my career that I'm able to play a small part in that.
Yeah, I've been to the Derby Museum, but I've not been out there. But it's definitely on the list. Hope maybe this next year when I get out to Saratoga, I'll be able to check it out. But um, yeah, and I guess we'll move on to my point here, which is I don't know, man. It's getting to the point where I think the European horses, they're just gonna start winning every single turf race, and it's just
So
not
if
gonna
I
be
may
close.
jump in here, because I tweeted something right after the Breeders' Cup Turf that has a lot of merit. Every year, the Euros come over and, for the most part, kick our butts in these turf races. American turf racing. How come our turf horses don't stack up that of the rest of the world? Also, American horse racing. Ooh, this 2-year-old just breezed a furlong and 9 and change at a sale. Let's spend 7 figures. It's not complicated, people. If you want to beat the Euros in these races, stop buying flashy horses based on brilliance and start buying the types of horses that run well in these races. It's not hard.
Yeah, I mean Peter Brandt keeps on going and buying those French horses. Maybe you know that I don't know. What happened this weekend. Like even the horses that we thought would run well, I feel like didn't really show up. Um, you know, I mean, was it Tuesday? Who was like the third or fourth? We thought the third or fourth best European coming over won pretty easily.
I had her as the second one behind Nashua. That race, it set up perfectly for her with an Italian going out as quick as they did. And by the way, shout out to Ryan Moore, who had a heck of a couple of days for as many people as were dogging him and Aiden O'Brien for never winning Breeders' Cup races or coming over here. And they had themselves a weekend, as of course did Charles Appleby, who anytime he comes over, it doesn't matter if he's got multiple horses, just blindly bet them all. I made that mistake in the turf and it wound up costing me a little bit of money because I did not like the winner of the Breeders' Cup turf. I did like Nation's Pride, and I just wound up getting burned by the Appleby I didn't use. Not good. It's not a good feeling when that happens.
Yeah, I mean, what we once thought was the impenetrable uh, turf sprints. They're the Europeans are sending better and better horses over, and I mean, I know the Platinum Queen didn't run well, but if they keep on sending horses of that caliber who win those big races over there, it's just over. I mean, what if the Wesley Ward horses don't break from the gate, like what happened to Golden Pal? We're in trouble when it
Yeah.
comes to those races. So
Yep. And if you want to change that, American breeders, there's a way to do it. You're not going to like it though.
Disco Partner now standing for was it like $5,000 RNA, I believe.
Something like that. Yeah. Um, now, just it really does come down to everyone else breeds their horses differently. I mean, last year we had the Japanese horse Marsh Lorraine come in and break the hearts of a lot of people that we know very fondly. I, in fact, know two of them that got nosed out of five-figure scores at a minimum because of that horse. And then the Europeans come over, they kick our butts. At some point, there's going to be a discussion about, okay, how can we compete with these horses that we used to crush on an annual basis? There are going to be some hard answers that need to be told in that room. And whether or not anybody in there can take that criticism and change best practices, we'll see.
How long do you think it is before a Japanese horse wins a Derby?
In the next 10 years,
That's what I was thinking too.
I mean, we're breeding horses to go a mile. They're breeding horses to go a mile and a quarter. The saving grace is they're not breeding 3-year-olds to do that on the first Saturday in May yet. Once they wind up having horses that can do that early, then we're going to be in trouble. But it's happening. It's just a matter of when.
You want to move on to your last and
Yes,
final
and this is
point?
going to be a big surprise. We haven't spoiled this at all whatsoever. If
Horse
you,
racing can make
yeah,
grown men cry tears of joy. For those of you on
yeah,
the
I
podcast,
thank you for that. Every once in a while, I forget that there are some people out there that are not liking and subscribing and commenting on the official On the Wrong Lead YouTube channel, which you should absolutely do, even if you're downloading this podcast in audio form. Cody's Wish carried with it a heck of a story. It's something people knew about coming in. There was someone named Cody that had a very rare, heartbreaking condition, had bonded with this horse. They named it Cody's Wish. Cody's Wish wins the forego at Saratoga. They opt to run this horse in the dirt mile. Though personally, I think it would have won the sprint if they had run there because the horse was just exceptionally well met. Cody's Wish comes up to Cyberknife, and Josh, I'm sorry you have to relive this. Comes up in the short stretch where closers are not supposed to win, gets the nose down on the wire. Larry Kalmus has called thousands of races at a bunch of different venues over the course of his career. He might go to his grave without a call better than Cody's Wish comes true. Side note, if any of you out there posted that race without that line, indefensible, horrible social media, terrible marketing, and you should feel poorly. It's fantastic. It brings tears to the eyes of a lot of people. The anchors on the NBC desk could barely muster enough strength to talk about what happened during the race. It was really, really cool. And I say that even after my best bet of the weekend, Laurel River, scratched out of that race and would have monkey stomped that field by 3 or 4 lengths with his ears pricked. And you will never be able to tell me otherwise, Josh. Still, just a fantastic moment. And there are times where this game can still produce those kinds of moments on big stages despite all of the self inflicted wounds, despite all of the humans involved that can't get out of their own way in one way or another. This is why we love this game. This is why we do this show. This is why a lot of people out there do similar shows. We're not getting paid a ton of money for this, people. We're doing this because we love the game and we love stories like this one.
Yeah, I mean the other well, first it felt like this year almost every race had, some kind of story behind it, you know.
Tyler's Tribe was
Yeah.
another one. Yeah.
Yeah, and it unfortunate what, Tyler Schreiber got
Sounds
pulled
like
up.
he's going to be okay. That opens up the Lasix debate again. Personally, if we're breeding horses that need to run on Lasix, those horses shouldn't be running at all if we're serious about race day medications. But again, breeding industry.
Yep, and it's tough. It's tough to like my problem with the whole Lasix discussion. I know that's not what we're talking about now, but is we went so many years with it that like getting off of it is going to be it's going to take years because
Painful. Yeah.
it because I forgot who it was and it was a turf sprinter I really liked and I can't remember the name of the horse now, but the horse had always run on Lasix. And sure enough, they at some point they pulled the band-aid off and like, all right, can't run on Lasix anymore for stakes racing. And the horse bled, but had won a bunch of stakes races using Lasix. And the trainer was mad. It's like, hey, like this horse has always run on Lasix. It has been sound, has never had any problems, and you take the Lasix away and look what happened to my horse. And like I get that. I completely understand it. At the same time, I think at a certain point, uh, if we want to compete with the rest of the world in certain races or other races, if we want to compete internationally, if we want more horses to ship in and compete against our horses, I think we need to adopt the rules that are used everywhere.
Yep.
I I'm not a vet. I'm not a horse. I'm not a horseman. I don't know truly the 100% the effects of Lasix, but I do know that they don't race with it necessarily in other jurisdictions, and we probably need to get on the same page with that. But
It became one of my best angles whenever a European shipped over to the United States and got Lasix for the first time on Breeders' Cup Day. That's how I got a couple of really big scores. When Red Rocks won the Breeders' Cup Turf, European first time Lasix had him 9-1, I think. Dangerous Midge, European first time Lasix, 8-1 under Frankie Dettori. Jogs in the Breeders' Cup Turf. Used to be a heck of a handicapping angle. Having said that, to understand why they're trying to phase that out. Now, there probably is a solution in a middle ground where if your horse is otherwise sound but needs Lasix, you get the horse on a list and you wind up having that horse monitored a little bit closer by one of the veterinarians that's there. There are ways in which you can go about it. I can't fault the idea of trying to get it out of the American breeding system, but that's going to take time. It's going to take some effort, and it's going to take a lot of people banding together in the interest of long term soundness that recently in the breeding game haven't made a lot of decisions based on long term soundness.
yeah, it's I don't know, man. It's a wild time. We're about to see a horse that's run 6 times in 2 years uh, sell for just an absolute.
And by the way, anybody out there, just before we go, because we've talked about the Hall of Fame, anybody out there that asks me if Flightline is a Hall of Famer, I don't know yet. I don't know if 6 starts is enough. I feel the same with Justify and the 6 starts that horse had. I understand that horses aren't bred like they used to be. I think longevity matters, and it's going to be a tough pill to swallow.
So I know, like on speed figures and just the eye test, and what we've seen, just I guess maybe even just the competition, right? That Flightline has faced. much more impressive, than what Justify's done, right? But let's pretend that it was even, right? Would you rather a horse race till 4 and run 6 times, or a horse retire at the end of their 3-year-old season and have raced 6 times?
Oh gosh. Um, it really, really depends. I mean, what do you value? Do you value the fact that a horse stayed in training, or do you value that a horse fit as much as Justify did into a very short time period? Because we talk about Flightline having won 4 Grade 1 races in about 10 months. Justify won the Santa Anita Derby and the Triple Crown in the span of 2 months. Now, that opens up questions about who he beat. I don't think that 3-year-old crop was all that special. It had good magic in there, but Gronkowski was the horse that ran second in the Belmont that year. It wasn't a great crop. Would he have been able to do that in a lot of other years? I don't know. I'm not sure as far as Flightline goes. It's just the one thing that I do think is not being given nearly enough credit to. There are people that say Flightline is the best horse they've seen since Secretariat. First of all, let's cool our jets with the comparison to a horse that won the Belmont by 31 lengths and 224 flat. Second of all, was he that much better than this big gray horse that we saw kick California Chrome's butt twice, then go halfway across the world, beat Gunrunner in the Dubai World Cup after the worst start in the history of that race? I think the best of Arrogate is darn close to what we see with Flightline. And the speed figures, by the way, bear that out.
Yeah, Airgate I think was maybe a year or two before I
Yeah,
started following
because you
horse
jumped in
racing.
2018. He won the 2016 Travers and Classic, and then he won the 2017 Pegasus, shipped across the world, won the Dubai World Cup after a start that made Golden Pal's start in the Breeders' Cup turf look good by comparison.
Yeah, and but from what I've heard of Airgate, I think that that's probably a more apt comparison than Secretariat. You know, I think I remember. So when we did this, I remember now what my third takeaway was.
There we go. We got there
The one
eventually.
that I
I
was
was just
sitting there
giving you
and trying to
time.
remember what it was. It was basically that, like, we're never going to see Secretariat again, and people need to
No,
stop thinking we're going to.
not at all whatsoever. Um, Secretariat's lifetime mark. Oh God, I used to know this. It was 16 of 20 something. It was a low 20s. Think about that. Horse ran 20 some odd times over 2 seasons. It's an average of 10 starts a year. How
Yep.
many top tier horses are running 10 times a year anymore? On multiple surfaces, by the way, because remember, his last couple of starts came on turf. They shipped him up to Woodbine and he won going away on grass because, of course, he did. I understand the need to compare across certain eras. It's what we do with all sports. You see it in baseball comparing Mike Trout to Mickey Mantle. You see it in basketball comparing LeBron to Michael Jordan. You see it in football comparing Tom Brady to Joe Montana and every other great quarterback that's ever played. It's what we do. Having said that, there are certain things that you're just not going to see again. Flightline was brilliant, and I hate that term. I hate the term brilliance because it can't be easily defined, and it's one of those things that promotes really short bursts of something wonderful as opposed to something sustained that fans can follow. Flightline is one of the most gifted horses I have ever seen. I've seen Flightline, I've seen Arrogate, I've seen Ghost Sapper. I'd put Wise Dan up there because of the longevity that he had. But again, Wise Dan was a gelding. That's the only reason we saw him have the kinds of campaigns that he had and keep coming back. But the talk of a horse being an all-time great, in great with all capital letters, I should say, when he ran 6 times. No.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just going to be like with other sports, right? When you see these home run for example, baseball, you see these home run numbers now, or when you see them from the steroid era. and you compare it to the 60s, the 70s, it's a different time.
So you keep going, but I've got a steroid era thing I want to bring it back to, and maybe we can use that as the final thought for this show.
But a horse racing, 3, 4 times a year, I think. I don't think it's necessarily going to be the norm, but 5 or 6 is probably going to be the max that we see, and single surface. I don't think we're going to get very many Catholic boys or Mishriffs that win big races on both surfaces like Secretariat did. Um, and but it's just I think it's just the times.
It is. It's a completely different product, and it's one of those instances where we can understand that certain horses are great regardless of the era they ran in. Flightline's great. Yeah, I'm with you there. Flightline is getting my vote for horse of the year and champion older horse, but I know he's not going to be a unanimous decision. I know there are people out there that are going to say he didn't run enough. He didn't have a substantial campaign. Now, what I will say is if Flightline say doesn't go in the Met Mile and he only runs in the Pacific Classic and the Breeders' Cup Classic, I probably don't vote for him. 2 starts, no, absolutely not. Even 3 makes me uneasy, but you do something as extraordinary as what he did. And if it's that clear that he's far and away the best of his generation, I can't see penalizing that. But that's just me. Um, Again, we're inclined to compare across certain eras because that's what we do. It makes for fun conversation. Acting as though Flightline's on the same level as the horse that produces goosebumps every time you watch that Belmont Stakes, where he's moving like a tremendous machine away from a horse in Sham, who was a very, very, very good horse that he just broke. No.
I thought you were going to say the Pizza Man because that call always gives me goosebumps. But
Yeah,
you're still
they,
talking
yes.
about Secretariat.
Yeah, no, you're the Chicago guy. I'm leaving all the Arlington stuff to you.
uh,
But no, there's been a lot of interesting takes out there on the Twitterverse, and we thank all of you for that and providing endless sources of entertainment for those of us that like to say, did they really just say that?
I'm sure people say that about our podcast too.
Oh,
So
I'm sure people say that about me all the time. I have seen fellow Saratoga handicappers subtweet me and be glorified for that. I know exactly who you are, by the way. I know you're watching this, and I have this very little speck in the back of my brain. Anyway, so going back to baseball for a minute, though, did you see that they announced the contemporary ballot for the Hall of Fame?
no,
They did. And it's the steroid guys, it's a couple others. Don Mattingly is on there. Here's a question. One of 2 things in my book is acceptable. Number one is Bonds and Clemens and all the others don't get in. But you have to take Bud Selig out because he's the guy that made the owners all of that money and did nothing to stop steroid use until he absolutely had to. And if you have Bud Selig in there and don't have the players, that's a double standard. The other one is Bonds and Clemens get in. If you want the steroid people out, I understand. And I'm okay with that. But I want Bud Selig's plaque gone. Can anybody out there make me that deal? And
I
yes, I
don't know.
know
I
I
think
think
I
about
think the
these things
steroid
way
guys
too
should get
much.
in. So
I think about these things way too much. My brain is a very convoluted place that I wish no one ever gets to go to.
yeah, I think the steroid guys should get in. FYI, but
I mean, my
uh,
thinking is this. You've got people there that admittedly doctored the ball, that admittedly stole signs, and were heavily rumored to be fixing games. Baseball's never been pure, and acting as though it ever has been at some point is misleading. Every era has its own cheaters. Every era has its own stories that the sport would prefer not be there. So I'm with you. Personally, I'd like to see Bonds and Clemens get in. Understand why they're not. But if they're not in, get Bud Selig the heck out of there.
while you're at it, put Pete Rose in the hall too.
That I don't know about. That's a wait a minute. You ready? You ready for this one? We're really, bringing
Yeah.
universes together. That's a horse of a different color. Waka,
Um,
waka, waka. By the way, did you see that he is going to place the very first legal sports bet in Ohio on January 1st, 2023?
I did.
He's got to make sure he stays up to midnight. I mean, he's pushing 80 at this point.
Yeah. Basically all the people who still watch baseball are pushing 82. So
Eh, I watch baseball. It's just, the three true outcomes stuff has to go away. I maintain that Greg Maddux, barely breaking a pane of glass with his fastball, might not get a look from major league teams right now because everybody's throwing 97, 98, blowing their arms out. And here's this guy that looks like an accountant. My dad always used to say that. And I would always remind him that Maddux went about 166-2 against his beloved New York Mets. And then he'd look at me and go, "You didn't have to say that."
if you haven't seen it yet, you should watch. There's this video where
Red
Greg
Bull.
Maddux. No,
Yep.
which one?
Red Bull did it. It was him throwing
Oh
batting
yeah,
practice,
okay,
right?
yeah,
Yep.
where he pranks Chris Bryant,
It's great.
and like Chris Bryant's just like he's like actually like swinging at some of his like stuff, and it's just like moving so slow, but like you still can't hit it. Like I don't know, it's great.
It's fantastic. That one's good. My other big bold take is that Tony Gwynn, who hit about 1,000 over the course of 18 years, gets evaluated as fat singles hitter with limited power. I loved watching Tony Gwynn hit.
Yep. Tony Gwynn's probably the second best pure hitter I'd ever seen in my lifetime. I think Ichiro is probably a little bit better.
Ichiro used to put on a show in batting practice, apparently, just cranking out dingers.
Yeah, but yeah. What we've covered everything today. We covered baseball. We covered two
College
Hall of
basketball had its
Fames.
opening night tonight. I almost wasn't able to do this. I thought about going to St. Mary's opening night game against Oral Roberts.
All right, I don't know about college basketball at all, so I think.
Oh, we'll teach you. We'll teach you. I'm going to be in Vegas for March Madness next year, and by the time I get there, you're going to be, asking for reports from sports books as part of the On the Wrong Lead YouTube channel. And by the way, like, comment, and subscribe. We're very close to 1,000 subscribers. It's a nice round number. Help us out.
Yep. Yeah, I really don't know what we're gonna cover this week with with just I don't know. It's kind of a bit of a lull. You'll get Clark Day coming up. You get Cigar Mile. But
Gulfstream opens up again, and at some point, you're going to get the claiming crown. That's always fun.
that's at Churchill this year.
Oh, it's a church? Like, yeah, that's right. I
Yeah.
forgot they're going to be moving that around. What are they going to do with the grass races?
That's
By the
a
way,
they ran a grass race.
so riddle me this, because there's stuff with the fairgrounds turf course now. The rest of the gambling world is talking about things like building a casino on Mars. And here in horse racing, we've forgotten how to grow grass and we can't time races. As you said a week or two ago, horse racing has the best technology.
Has the best technology. No, unbeatable. So Andrew, I know tomorrow, election day, or today, technically, you'll be covering all things California for the legalization of sports betting there. The two
Well,
propositions that
we'll
look like they're
see. It's the attempted legalization of sports betting. It does not look very good. Having said that, yes, I'll be putting on the journalist hat again, probably having to pay for my own election pizza, which is, of course, a journalist ritual. You have to have pizza in every newsroom, even if your newsroom is your apartment in Northern California. But yeah, it doesn't look good for Props 26 and 27. Having said that, regardless of wherever you are, regardless of whatever your political affiliation is, go vote. That's the way to make yourself heard. It's not through Twitter. It's not through social media. It's not through YouTube. And I understand the hypocrisy of saying that on a YouTube show slash podcast. The way to make your voice heard on the truly important stuff, not the horse racing stuff that we do, the important stuff, it's at the ballot box. Vote, follow all the appropriate procedures, understand the rules that are in place. If you are in line when the polls close, they cannot kick you out. You have to get the opportunity to vote regardless. If you want to vote by mail, you can drop your ballot off. There are ways to do that. Do your civic duty, people. Go vote.
All right. And we'll be live again Thursday night, 7:30 Central, 8:30 Eastern. What we'll cover, who knows? But we'll look at something. We'll have
Australia's
something.
still going.
Hey, I know. I saw Nature Strip lost this past weekend, so that was some big news. And I think the second choice also like ran very poorly. But
Mhm.
for all things Australia and sales, at Caitlin E Free on Twitter. But yeah, that's going to do it for us. Thank you guys for listening. If you haven't already, like and subscribe. Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube. Um, I last week with all the craziness, we did miss two giveaways. So I did get the one gentleman. We're gonna get him squared away. So we got more stuff to give away. We'll figure out a way to give it away. So sorry about that, but yeah, I'm Josh, and for Andrew, we will catch you guys later.